Culture knows no barriers. High are the mountains, wide are the seas, but ideas travel from land to land. Today, the magic of modern communications has, in effect, shrunk the earth itself. The free interflow of knowledge among nations quickens the onward pace of world civilization. About a century ago, a Chinese boy called Young Wing left his home and sailed for a strange land, the thinly populated new continent of America. It was the year when the American flag was carried to the Pacific by settlers. 7 years later, Young Wing graduated from Yale College. That was the year Commodore Perry knocked open the reluctant door of Japan. The once mysterious and almost shipless Pacific now entered into the turbulent modern era. Meanwhile, Young Wing became the first Chinese college graduate in the United States. Through his contact with Western civilization, he developed the idea that to invigorate China, the old wisdom of the Orient must be blended with a new knowledge of the West. After 10 years of fermentation, his plan of sending Chinese boys, 12 to 15 years of age, to America, finally won approval of the decaying Manchu government. Between the years 1872 and 1875, 120 were chosen. They were sent abroad in 4 groups. That was the time when Emperor Meiji was busy renovating Japan. Among China's first 100 returned students, many served in the fields of communication, naval affairs, diplomacy. The Admiral Sei King Kan and the builder of the Peking-Kalgan Railway, Jan Tinyao, were 2 who helped China to start on her arduous road to modernization. New life arose from destruction. Awakening was China's consciousness of the rushing currents of scientific development and social ideas in other lands. Extending to the far horizon of Dr. Sun's vision were hundreds of thousands of miles of railroads, highways, water routes, millions of modern vehicles, great seaports, gigantic hydroelectric dams. These things must be planned by trained men, built by trained men, and managed by trained men. One of the major forces which helped China to educate her sons and daughters abroad is the Tsinghua Fellowships, made possible by the Boxer Indemnity Fund returned by the United States. The Tsinghua Preparatory School, established in 1909, was later expanded into the National Tsinghua University. There were also other government sponsorships, but the majority of the students came through private means. Looking back, we can see some obvious milestones on this road to America. In 1898, there were only 6 Chinese students in America. 7 years later, this was increased to 106. At the beginning of the First World War, the number reached 847. And after the war, it jumped to 1,500. There were 1,287 in 1928, 1,806 in 1938, and 1,737 in 1942. The numerical increase is an outward sign of the growing importance attached to overseas studies. The contributions made by returned students should not be underestimated. For instance, the work of this Yale graduate in mass education has in a few decades freed millions of Chinese from the slavery of ignorance. Johns Hopkins is a famous medical college of the United States. This alumnus has done much towards advancing public sanitation and improving national health since his return to China. This graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology is a pioneer in China's chemical industry. He improves the livelihood of people through the exploitation of natural resources. These are only a few among the prominent returned students from America, men who today are statesmen, leaders in private enterprise, and authorities in many branches of learning. Several thousand Chinese students are in the United States today. They are at the threshold of the future, in which China will bear her share of responsibility in securing a permanent world peace. The Chinese are the largest group of non-American students in the United States. They are scattered far and wide in almost every college and university of the 48 states. Their courses of study reflect clearly the various needs of their homelands. China needs production on a large scale. Thus, engineering becomes the most popular field for men students. These students are not limited to the classroom, but extend to postgraduate research. Some students even take up the teaching of engineering in America. The principles learned in classrooms are verified in the laboratory. All over the United States, splendidly equipped laboratories such as this for automotive engineering are being utilized by Chinese students. Here, a model plane is analyzed for its performance at different angles of attack by wind. Drafting is the first step in the schedule of any plant production. Every student of engineering must spend a great deal of time in the drafting room. The library systematically presents records of past experience and reports of daily progress. After graduation, most Chinese students take practical training in American factories. The sincere cooperation of the American government and industries has made this possible. For example, in this turbine shop of the General Electric plant, a Chinese and an American engineer are taking vibration readings. In the motor testing department, a Chinese engineer uses a stroboscope to count the number of slips of a motor under test. This laboratory assistant tests the properties of magnetic materials to be used in the manufacture of electrical apparatus. Using electronic tubes for controlling tension in textiles is a new development. All the contractors and relays on this control panel must be carefully checked according to the instructions. A gigantic motor is needed to propel an ocean liner. When the circuit breaker is closed, the testing engineer must quickly record the voltage and current readings. In the Middle West, veteran Chinese military officers who were trained in China now get further experience in the large automobile plant of the Studebaker Corporation. They learn how to build, test, and maintain. On the assembly line, a 6-cylinder engine is lowered into the frame of a heavy-duty truck. At another point on the assembly line, the battery is placed. The truck radiator is filled with water and the headlights are adjusted. This is virtually the last assembly operation. Lights are focused on a screen in front of the vehicle. Repair and maintenance supplement each other. After actual road tests, if defects are found, they must be immediately remedied in order to avoid damage. There is no formal learning here. The trainees work on what interests them most. They mix with workers and learn from active participation as well as overall observation. Quite a few Chinese are working in large plants of the American aeronautical industry. Here in a West Coast plant of Douglas Aircraft, an engineer and 2 draftsmen are analyzing this fuselage. In this way, draftsmen and field workers cooperate with each other. In the East Coast Republic Aircraft plant, some study designing, some study testing. This flight test engineer examines the entire plane before and after its flight. In the Baldwin Locomotive Works, a Chinese engineer makes final adjustments in the boiler of a completed engine. In the production of machinery, the nature of raw materials must be carefully investigated. Here, a hydraulic press is used to test the compression strength of cast iron blocks. In one of the Standard Oil laboratories, they are trying to find useful material in the residue waste gas from oil refining. Modern lubricating oils require the fortification of additives to maintain a clean engine condition. This research worker is preparing an additive. He pours the ingredients together and shakes them vigorously in a separatory funnel to see if any insoluble residue is precipitated. But the foundation of all industries is science. It is forever seeking new horizons and opening new eras of technology. Mathematics is the base as well as the peak of science. Other subjects, such as physics and chemistry, are also basic branches of knowledge in realizing national industrialization. This zoologist is studying parasitology using white mice for an experiment to see if immunity from one parasite assures immunity from other parasites. In New York's Botanical Garden, a Chinese botanist studies development of molds. After this research, she will be able to determine how the rotting of wood by molds in automobiles might be prevented. The anthropologist disentangles misconceptions among races and nations. The rich subterranean resources of China must be exploited by Chinese geologists. In America, geologists who specialize in petroleum alone number several thousand. In China, the total number of geologists is only in the hundreds. We can see the pressing need for these specialists and the scope of their responsibility. China is primarily an agricultural nation, but after contenting themselves with established methods for some 40 centuries, the farmers are often unable to produce enough for the people. Only through mutual help of industry and agriculture can China be rejuvenated. Farm machinery speeds production. Cattle raising is a large source of America's wealth. Beef and milk contribute much to its people's physical welfare. What these students learn here must be a key to the improvement of Chinese national health and the establishment of sound agricultural economy. Soil erosion by water impoverishes nations. In order to preserve the richness of the earth, the nature of the soil must be known. On this university experimental farm, students are analyzing various kinds of soil. Water run off a slope is collected in a tank and weighed. Again, to determine its water-holding capacity. The use of insecticides is a chief method in eliminating plant pests. In the laboratory, the research worker injects chemicals into the insect body to find out their toxic effects. In the orchard, large amounts of insecticides are used. Here, studies in entomology and horticulture are closely allied and prove the interdependence of all branches of learning. Forests, like grain crops, must be cultivated. This is essential for maintaining national wealth. In the study of agriculture, 3 stages must be passed. The first stage is classroom study, where fundamental principles are explained and learned. The experience of the past is analyzed in the light of new circumstances. The second is field experiment, where book learning is tested systematically, results carefully weighed and compared. The final stage is the dedication of this knowledge to the farmers so that the academic scholarship may be transmuted into increasing the harvest of the nation. Everyone needs food for the mind as well as food for the body. Journalists engage in publishing to inform the public of current events and to give voice to opinions and criticism. The motion picture is one of the most effective media of education. Drama has the power of influencing the subconscious. This Chinese student is interested in playwriting and directing. His first play in America is being performed by the drama department of a famous university. Here is a glimpse of the rehearsal. Another important force in modern education is the radio. This university's own studio gives her an excellent chance for practice work. There are those who consider literature, philosophy, and fine art impractical subjects, but great ideas can sway the world, and fine cultures immortalize nations. Before China steps into the door of industrialization, her past culture needs to be reviewed and studied in order that it may be amalgamated with the best of Western civilization and thus lead to new Oriental contributions. These are the responsibilities of students of literature, philosophy, and art. The greatness of their task is beyond the reach of our imagination. Music, sculpture, painting, they all express the essence of man's impressions and feelings of life. They all in turn enrich life and remove the barriers of past and present, native and foreign. Recent medical studies are not only directed toward healing, but also to prevention. Medical science must therefore embrace all branches of medicine, nursing, surgery and dentistry, child care, dietetics, public health, and so forth. This nurse is undergoing a practical training in one of the largest hospitals in New York. The nutritional value of food is this student's concern. She uses white mice in an experiment to determine the food value of soybeans. But the medical student is not so free in using human beings as guinea pigs. He must complete about 7 years of study, followed by internship, before he is qualified to be a doctor. Dietetics concerns itself with balanced meals which yield energy for work, materials for building body tissues, and protective foods for regulating physiological functions. Who hasn't suffered from a toothache? This American boy understands well the importance of dental care. An Eastern Women's College conducts a special institute for the study of child psychology and child care each summer. Above all men's problems is man's relationship to man. No matter what the student's field, he hopes to gain reference knowledge from the well-developed Western laws to put China's original democratic ideals into practical legal application and to stabilize the foundations of world justice. As field work outside the classroom, this sociology student observes different community organizations such as this home for old people. The cooperative movement is growing in the United States. A Chinese student of economics visits this store to consider its application to China. American democracy is symbolized by the Capitol in Washington. The legislative branch of the government, as well as the other two branches, are studied intensively by people interested in political freedom the world over. This Chinese student of political science visits these places personally in order to make first-hand observations. Many Chinese students are learning American government methods in offices such as the Federal Security Agency and the Census Bureau through personal observation. Some Chinese students are interested in the operation of American municipalities and the public press. Here a visit is paid to the New York Times to observe the freedom of the press in operation. Though specialized, they all share the same purpose and spirit. In this choral society of the Chinese National Reconstruction Forum, they give voice to their unity in song. This forum is an organization to bring Chinese students together to exchange views and learning and give them the opportunity to hear news from home. Under the direction of Chai Meng of China Institute of America, branches of the forum spread to every student center. China Institute, located in New York, is a channel through which Chinese and American cultures interchange. Founded in 1926, it has administered fellowships as well as given help and advice to students concerning their practical training and other matters. The Institute of International Education, under the direction of Dr. Stephen Duggan, champions international exchange of professors and scholars. Although most of the Chinese students came by private means, during wartime, many needed financial assistance. Both the Chinese and American governments contributed toward the cause. Besides the original scholarships and fellowships, the Chinese Committee on Wartime Planning sponsored more than 100 fellowships, and the United States Department of State sponsored several hundred more. After the war broke out in the Pacific, Americans became more and more China conscious. Schools, churches, and clubs all over the United States began to invite Chinese students in their vicinities to speak about Chinese affairs and culture. These students, therefore, also assume the role of teachers and act as cultural ambassadors.
My stay here for the past several years has made me more eager than ever to come back to serve China. The more I see here, the more I feel can be done at home. I have traveled much, visiting lost cities to study how they have achieved so much in 1 or 2 centuries. I have made so many American friends whose homes I have visited. They all have great interest in and hope for China. Some would like to come to China one day. In America, stores which sell books, magazines, and newspapers are around all the street corners. Many libraries and museums are free or accessible to the public for a very small charge. With our homeland torn by war and the opportunity for learning unlimited here, I realize that we must use this opportunity to compress the work of a century into a decade. Every spare moment that I have after class is spent in observation of general conditions in this country. I am a student of history, but I also teach a class in Chinese history in a nearby high school. I hope the Americans of next generations will have a deeper understanding of our country. As for myself, I take every opportunity to learn about their ways, how they work, how they play, their food, their homes. I like their frankness and their initiative and progressive spirit. In fondness for making friends, the Chinese and Americans have something in common. I hope this kind of temperament will be a foundation for future world peace.
Yes, when they return, each of them will multiply his learning 1,000-fold through teaching, writing, planning, building, and personal deeds. Cities destroyed by war will rise from ashes. The people molested by disease and pestilence will be healed by medical care. Farmers will be taught to produce more through the improvement of their methods and implements. The natural wealth hidden underground will be unlocked. Underprivileged people will have opportunity for education. This is only the beginning of the realization of a great promise, that China may become a firm pillar of world peace, that this great ancient country may continue to flourish in a new era and help to build a modern culture. The United States of America is proud of having the opportunity to help her ally in war and partner in peace, and prove once again in the world's history that culture indeed knows no barriers.